Welcome, welcome. Get started in about 2 minutes. People are still piling in, so we'll give everybody a minute or so. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. It's 12:01 Eastern time, so I guess good afternoon for the East Coast folks and everybody else still enjoying the morning. So I am Brian Klontz with Charitable Solutions. Just to go through a couple housekeeping items here before we sort of launch in. This is, I believe, our 31st webinar. Started these back in June during the pandemic in 2020 and have been continuing these pretty consistently every month since then. So we've got a great one here today with Paul doing most of the presentations. I'll introduce him in a minute. And so as you know, we don't typically send out the slides directly. However, this is being recorded, and on the CharitableSolutionsLLC.com website under resources, we have all of the past webinars. Those are all free, and you can watch to your heart's content. In addition, we include the FAQs from the, I guess, or just the Qs, the questions from the Tuesday session. And then I would strongly encourage you, if you have any questions through this presentation today, to include that, if you don't mind, in the question and answer, the Q&A tab here for Zoom. Much easier for us to scrape that than the chat. So all things being equal, if you can include it there. I will do my best to answer some questions. If there are particular themes, I'll tease that out and pitch those over to Paul without trying to stump him. And then any that, for whatever reason, we are not able to answer, again, we will scrape those. We'll combine those with Tuesdays. And then I hope Monday we'll be able to send out a link for the best recording. Tuesdays was actually quite good, or today's. And then we will include all of the Q&A. So that's sort of it for that sort of intro. So what we're here to talk about, obviously, today, actually, if you go back just, Paul, just for a second. So we're going to talk about revolutionizing, a pretty bold comment, but it's coming, whether you want to or not. Gift planning with Chat GPT and other technologies, unlocking the power of practical application. So Paul will again be our primary Sherpa guide through this, and I'll be doing more of the Q&A as we sort of go through too. So yeah, if you don't mind advancing, Paul. So many of you know, I'll do 6-7 minutes at most, sort of what we do more broadly. So I created Charitable Solutions in January 15th, on January 15th, 2003. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary, so you can see our new handy dandy logo there at the bottom. And since day one, our mission has been to help make charitable gifts happen that otherwise wouldn't. And so primarily do that through risk management, aggregation, and structure. And so very briefly, sort of whip through, I'll go sort of top right first, since that's probably least applicable for this group. But I created a charity that's a national foundation that does employee relief and disaster hardship grants, primarily for large employer groups. So that is the Emergency Assistance Foundation. That one's grown very, very quickly in the last decade. We now cover, I think it's about 13 million employees total globally. We have about 170 team members on that side of the shop. But what we do is we create nonprofit funds, basically field of interest funds within one 501c3, that then allow us to manage those programs so that any donations made are fully tax deductible, since we're a public charity. And then because we technically break what's called the nexus between the employee-employer relationship, therefore then all grants, since they're independently decided and controlled, are tax-free. And so we do a ton of those grants. So that's that side. Bottom right, what we're doing now are training sessions. Definitely getting back on the road the last 6 or 7 months. I think I've got 4 days in the office here in Jacksonville in May, which is not going to be pretty, but I will enjoy it when I'm there. Getting there's the pain. But doing CE speeches, board training, staff training, donor speeches, nonprofit speeches. So I do a lot of those, maybe 60 to 80 days out or so a year. But we have a number of other team members. Paul was asked to give actually this talk to a DC potential client here too. And so we have now 28 members of the Charitable Solutions team, 7 attorneys in addition to myself. I think 2 or 3 on the call today, Paul and a number of others, very senior advisors sort of on the team that also do these types of speeches. So do a lot of that. Charitable appraisals would be next. So we built out a team about 18 months ago where I've always done life insurance and crypto appraisals personally, but we just kept getting the questions around other gifts that were made for life income gifts, estate gifts, or obviously outright gifts directly to charities that they needed a qualified appraisal. So built out a team of 5 that do that now, and our sort of little tagline is, if you can give it to charity, we can appraise it. So it's sort of our one-trick thing here is just doing charitable qualified appraisals. You see all the stuff that we do. Then for gift annuities, we sort of do 2 components to that. One is if the charity is managing their own pool, sort of self-insured pool or self-administered pool, we do gift annuity risk management. So they're top middle. I've had 2 actuaries on staff really for all 20 years. So do basically stress testing of gift annuity pools to hopefully improve health, both on existing pools and going forward. And then also some analysis if there's a very large concentrated risk within the pool, which is we could do maybe a third of our work is sort of in that space. And whether there are other risk mitigation devices, could be reinsurance. If it is reinsurance, we help with design and placement of that where appropriate. And sort of do that work. Been picking up a lot this year. So usually when the market is booming, nobody calls because everything is great. And when the market goes down, we get a lot of frantic, might be strong, but maybe frantic phone calls about sort of what's going on with our gift annuity pool and sort of how best can we manage that. For those clients or others that don't either have a pool or have a pool but are not registered in particular states, or have particular types of illiquid gifts that are being considered for donation where they do not want to particularly take those in, we have the National Gift Annuity Foundation. So that one is growing very quickly, about 18 to 20% a year right now. Paul, I think right now is working on at least 2 large gift annuities with real estate as an example. We had one that was going to do crypto. They didn't go through with it, but even on sort of the crypto side, but we're registered about bottom line is in all 50 states, including the always fun New York, Washington, California, Hawaii. And we then administer those gift annuities until the annuitant's passing, and then 100% of the residuum is then granted out. So again, it gets back to risk management because we have a separate independent pool. So we're managing the asset and liabilities and aggregation. So we have about 350 charities that have referred at least 1 gift annuity to us. We've got over now 700 contracts. I need to update that, over 60 million in assets. So if those ever come up, and otherwise, again, you were going to say no, don't say no, we can help with that. I will say, and I need to add this to the list, Paul has helped build out a CRT platform for us. We do not do direct investment, and we do not do administration for outside pools. However, for situations where, in particular for illiquid gifts, we've been doing this, but now we're sort of broadening it out to a liquid platform, that if they don't want to self-trustee the gift, if the charity is too small and they don't want to be the charitable trustee, then we can be the charitable trustee through actually the Decami Foundation. So that's top left. So that we're able, again, we can be the trustee, do the administration and investment, or outsource that. And then 100% of the remainder cannot stay with us. It's coming to us and then out. So again, everything we do is sort of a risk management flow through, pass through entity. So more core of what we do are non-cash asset receipt. So any kind of illiquid gift that is otherwise offered to a charity. Almost all of these are outright gifts, probably 98% or so. We have the Decamai Foundation as a national donor advised fund, and the Decamai Asset Trust, also a national donor advised fund, only taking in the last 20 years illiquid gifts. So we've done just under 2 billion in the last 24 months. So far this year to date, just got the numbers from my partner, Ryan Raffin, who I think is on the call today too, that we're just about 250 million received in the first 4 months. And this is usually our super slow period. So these are incredibly exponentially increasing. So our average is about 4.4 million per donation. We do about 1 per day. An average fee there is a touch under 1.4. Last year was 1.35%. So we try to drive the fees down as much as we can. 30 days after the sale, if there's liquidity, it's going out. So where the donor wished to give it to in the first place, other donor advised funds, faith-based organizations, universities, wherever they were trying to get it to. So again, we don't manage anything once it's liquid. Currently manage about 2 billion in illiquid positions, average about 15 to 20 million per donor advised fund. So these tend to be very large and generally complex. That's it. That's the little purview. I always do this because I have people that I work with for 20 years. I go, oh, I know what you guys do. You do appraisals. Like, we do, but we do some other things too. So I've always been horrible at sort of the broader marketing of this. I hope that wasn't too painful. And I would say too, for this particular session, we've had, or this topic, we had, I think, about 800 or so, touch over 800 register. So I really appreciate you joining, spending your time and learning some about these things too. So with that, I want to create a little quick theme. So I'm going to share my screen. Well done, Paul. You were at the ready. And let's see if it can come through. I never know if it comes through. Looks like it didn't. So we will see. I'm just going to do screen. So I'm going to share screen. I'm going to jump over here, jump up here, and then I'm going to do this. Paul, all good? You see that okay? That it's starting at least?
Yes, it looks like the video is starting.
Excellent. So this is Formula One pit stops, 1950 Indy 500. So it has them coming in for the pit stop. Look at the guy at the top right. I love this guy. He literally has a hammer and he's banging the lug nut. I think that's very funny for some reason. He's just whacking it. So this is a pit stop. 1950. You all know, if you don't know anything about racing, you know pit stops pretty important. So if you can cut off a second, half a second, this is a minute. I think it's a minute and 47-second pit stop. Why am I talking about this? It's a metaphor for what's happening technologically and also what's going to be happening, I believe, very much from an AI perspective. From 1950 to 2013, that's 63 years. Over 63 years, my presumption could be false, is that somebody looked at this pit stop. They're still in it. They're still in the pit stop. I think he even got out of it too and like got a drink or something. It's pretty funny. Now they're doing the whole thing. They're wiping the windshield. There he goes. He's off. So my expectation was 1951, they probably said, you know what, we probably ought to make that a little bit faster. In 1952, a little bit faster. 1953, a little bit faster. Here we are, 2013 Melbourne. Different style of pit stop. Also interesting, that first group that you saw, the pit crew, I think half had graduated high school, half had not. For this pit crew, everyone has a college degree. Of those, I think it's a third have master's degrees, and there are 4 PhDs engineering on this staff. This is the pit stop in 2013. Little different is the point. And so I'm going to stop sharing now. Paul will sort of crank that back up. The point is, this is what's happening in real time and what will be happening in an accelerated way with AI going forward. So this, I want to pass it over to Paul to walk us through. I'm going to be available, but I'm going to look at the Q&A stuff. But any questions you have, just post them again in the Q&A side. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. And please chime in as we move throughout. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is a little deviation from what Brian and I typically do in these webinars. Last year, we had 2 of them, one on supporting organizations and a deep dive into charitable remainder trusts, which is our kind of our comfortable space. And so while I think we probably profess to be plan giving nerds, we're definitely not technology nerds. So if you are, what we're going to say talk about today is pretty perfunctory. But if you're not, and you just want to simply understand how to start using some available technology to make your job better or more effective at whatever you do, whether you're a professional advisor, plan giving specialist, development officer, I think you're at the right place. I want to begin, before I touch on the agenda, I want to look backwards 30 years precisely. You may have noticed on our invitation to this webinar, there's a quote from Bill Gates from 1993, and Bill's quote was, he says, "The internet, we are not interested in it," which is a real quote. And so Bill, even at that time in 1993, couldn't see how the internet would have an impact on Microsoft at that particular time. 30 years exactly later, 30 years almost to the month, Microsoft invested $10 billion into OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT, which we will discuss quite a bit today in our session. And it got me thinking about that quote from 1993. And I wondered, was 1993 kind of a watershed moment for technology? And it turns out that it was. And there was something else that happened in 1993, and I don't know why it had such a profound impact on me, but it did. It was an ad campaign from AT&T, and just like the YouTube video, Brian, you could Google the "You Will" AT&T commercials from 1993, and you can watch all of these commercials. And if you're at least of my vintage or older, you could appreciate the how AT&T kind of eerily predicts the future of technology. These videos I learned after I looked, or the commercials after I started researching it, was directed by David Fincher. And if you don't know David Fincher, he's one of the most respected directors in Hollywood today of many blockbuster movies. And the voiceover was Tom Selleck. So maybe it was just Tom Selleck's voice that had an impact on me. But it would say, the commercials would start out by saying, "Have you ever driven through a toll booth and driven right through without having to stop? You will," and the company that will bring it to you is AT&T. Of course, nowadays, yesterday, I just drove through a toll booth, Florida Sun Pass, drove right through, didn't have to stop and pay anybody. We take that for granted now, but in 1993, we didn't know what the internet was yet at the time, or at least most of us didn't. But what was happening behind the scenes was this, was all of these things happening at the same time. And I've got just a few of them listed up here. So several of them that I think are important were the Mosaic web browser went public. Well, because of the Mosaic web browser, which was developed by a team at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications, it was the first widely used graphical web browser. And it played a crucial role in really actually popularizing the World Wide Web. So that's when it really started getting introduced at universities. I was still in college at that time, and I remember getting introduced to email in 1994, and then I believe access to the World Wide Web about 1995 or 96. Also at that time, NVIDIA was founded, and this is important. I had the opportunity to work with one of the 3 founders of NVIDIA in my time at the University of Florida, who is an alum and a supporter. And it's a company, you would see their name on the side of laptops, 10 or 15 years ago, especially for gaming laptops, because they had the graphics cards. But they've now become one of the largest companies on the planet. And primarily, they're developing the hardware for the supercomputers that are powering AI today and will do so in the future. Just a couple other ones. Intel developed the Pentium processor. And that was important because it allowed for more complex and resource-intensive applications that helped the growth of the personal computer market. And then finally, something that I bet everyone on this webinar probably will use today, PDFs, portable document format. I didn't even know what that stood for. Adobe Systems introduced that in 1993, kind of leading to this widespread adoption of the ability to display and share documents across several operating systems. So a lot of things happened in 1993 that set the stage for where we're at today. So in our time that we have, and Brian, please keep me on track and chime in as we move along, we're just going to do a quick introduction of some of the nomenclature of some of this new technology as we all learn more about it and try to understand it. I'm going to also talk about my personal 5-step process for analyzing a charitable gift, and hopefully you'll find that useful, or maybe you pick up your own method for analyzing a charitable gift. And then we're going to talk about how I use that process along with various plan giving research tools that are available today, not just ChatGPT, but products that have been available now for years, and some of them decades. We're going to talk about best practices for how to use artificial intelligence and other technologies into your research. I'll give you a few examples of some case studies of implementing, in our case, we're using ChatGPT, ChatGPT-4, and how you could use that. And we'll talk about how it can benefit both charities and donors, and kind of wrap things up and maybe try to answer some questions as we go. There was a study that was commissioned by OpenAI and the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton College of Business. And one of the takeaways was that our findings indicate that approximately 80% of the workforce could have at least 10% of their tasks affected by the introduction of GPTs, while 19%, let's just round it up to 20% of workers may see at least 50% of their tasks impacted. So, and this influence is going to span all wage levels. It's going to span those with high income jobs, college degrees. And at the same time, they also do observe that each of the jobs that we have is set up with a bundle of various tasks. And we're not anywhere close to a place right now to find an occupation where the AI tools could basically just do the job. Another study from Goldman Sachs titled "The Potentially Large Effect of Artificial Intelligence on Economic Growth." It predicts that artificial intelligence is going to drive the global economy in the rest of this decade and the decade ahead. And it could boost global GDP very soon to 7%. In the US, we could jump from, where we're at today, I think 1% is the number that came out this morning, to a more robust 2.5% to 3%, like we saw in the 1950s, 1990s for sure, because of the introduction of new technology at that time. The research highlights that AI automation is going to affect 2/3 of occupations to varying degrees, and a significant portion of these jobs could see a substantial replacement due to automation. And again, we have to remind ourselves that this boom in the global economy, it's going to fuel a faster economy, and it will have new demands. And because every time we have a big time technological innovation, whether it's the Industrial Revolution or when the internet came about in the early 90s, mid 90s, we've seen new jobs created. In fact, if you went back 80 years to 1940, 85% of the jobs that we have today didn't exist then. So there's always going to be new jobs and going to be new technologies that drive these new jobs. Let's see, what other point did I want to make? Some people, I think, are maybe frightened a little bit by that, but others think that it's time for a reset anyway. Many have opined that, especially in the United States, that there's a significant shortage of skilled labor. I won't call it blue collar, but a shortage of skilled labor in the United States. And a recent study from the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center shows that trade school interest is on a major increase, or on the up and up, with double-digit increases in many vocational programs, mechanic repairs of all kinds, construction, and culinary courses. And that's unlike the 2-year degrees that a community college, which enrollment right now is down 7.8% and 3.4% respectively for 4-year degrees. So young individuals are starting to see that just going and getting the traditional college degree that many of us, in, a couple generations back, were told that you absolutely need to do. We're starting to see that now there's kind of this pivot back to the trades, which I think is encouraging for many. So how did we get here? The internet emerged from ARPANET. This is a network of computers established in the late 1960s by the Department of Defense to facilitate communication between research institutions and universities. And it evolved to this global network of interconnected computer systems that we now know today. And it's fueled by this creation of the World Wide Web, which was first developed in 1989 by a British computer scientist, Tim Berners-Lee, this enabled access, a user's access and to share information between each other. So it allowed us to connect to information. That was Web 1.0. Web 1.0 also started to deliver services that we could do on the internet, like book your travel or trade stocks. In 1996, I graduated from college, and my first job was with oldie discount stockbrokers. That was going to be my dream job. Within a year, Ameritrade, E-Trade, and all these other organizations introduced online trading. So there was really no need to have that intermediary. And that's really what technology does, is if technology can replace an intermediary, it will. And that's what Web 1.0 did for several careers. And it made it more efficient and effective to provide several of those services in Web 1.0. Web 2.0 was connecting to each other. And that, you could say, is social networks and a number of other things. But also the time and place where you can also pinpoint when we started moving from Web 1.0 to 2.0 was when you're in your house, you probably went from dial-up and you were using America Online to like DSL or some type of cable modem. So that was about the time that we started having this giant shift from 1 to 2. And then we also got introduced to the smartphone, eventually the smartwatch, which these devices are now almost part of our biology. Maybe that's where it's heading, but it's, and then of course the introduction of apps for our mobile devices, all part of kind of this Web 2.0 type of evolution. And then we get to Web 3.0, which is kind of where we're at today. And a lot of us are still trying to understand what Web 3.0 is and what are the differences between 2 and 3. And really what it comes down to is that in Web 2.0, big data gathered a lot of information about us. And that data is kind of the new gold in our economy. And Web 3.0 in many cases is to protect user data and to protect user identity and to make democratize the internet. And employ advanced authorization mechanisms through distributed ledger technology and encryption for securing user identity and data. Brian's been involved heavily in crypto now for several years. And of course, blockchain technology is, crypto is built on the blockchain technology. Artificial intelligence, you've probably heard a little bit about the metaverse and DeFi. Which DeFi and crypto, a lot of similarities there. So that's a little bit about, how we got here. The AI nomenclature. So I'll start with ChatGPT because we're going to be talking about ChatGPT today quite a bit. The use of plain English speaking AI, such as ChatGPT, is really just kind of taken the country and the world by storm. ChatGPT reached 1 million users within 5 days. It was, I think, first introduced in November of 2022. By contrast, just to give you an idea, it took to get 1 million users, it took Netflix 3.5 years, and it took Facebook 10 months. So this is moving very, very quickly. What is ChatGPT? It is a computer program designed to generate answers to questions that are posed, or we call them prompts. And ChatGPT provides information in human-like conversational responses, which we'll show you several examples. It recently passed the multi-state bar exam in flying colors, with a score exceeding that of the average human bar taker. And so that's a little bit about ChatGPT. LLMs. Some of you on the call probably have LLMs. That is an advanced master's in tax for individuals who have law degrees or other types of advanced law degrees. In this case, we're talking about a large language model. And this is a type of AI algorithm that uses deep learning techniques and massively large data sets to understand, summarize, and generate and predict new content. And in prompt engineering, which is becoming kind of a new career, by the way, and you're going to find that, you know, when you use AI like ChatGPT, you still have to have a tremendous background and knowledge about the field that you are researching. And if you don't, there's no way you're going to arrive at your answer. And that's no different from really Googling something. But you'll see that this is a much different animal than a normal Google search very shortly. But you're basically, when you're trying to get information out of the AI, you got to prompt it, and you have to prompt it in the right way in order to get what you're looking for. So talk a little bit about planned giving for a second. So over time, I have developed a 5-step process for analyzing a charitable gift. Every gift that you're going to come across, you may not have to apply all 5 steps to it. But I try to keep this as a mental checklist or a mental model. And I would encourage you to utilize this or find something that works for you. But in every gift situation I'm looking at, I always look at all of my, all 5 of these. Number 1, who is the donor? Generally, we're going to be working with an individual or a couple, not a trust, corporation, or foundation, although you might be. What type of asset is being donated? Is it going to be long-term gain? Is it going to be short-term ordinary income? Is it going to be tangible? Is it going to be real property? And for those types of assets, is the charitable organization interested in a related use of those assets that will have different repercussions from an income tax standpoint as it pertains to the donor? Who's the donee? Again, generally, most of you are probably representing public charities out there, but often what I find when a new donor, a newer, major gift donor has a wealth event, maybe they're selling their company or something profound like that. What's the first thing that they're analyzing? Whether or not they should set up a private foundation. And so, it's important when you have a donor, you're going to come across donors that are going to be trying to compare what the tax outcomes and repercussions are of giving to your organization, your public organization versus that private foundation. Significant differences. And then finally, what is the gift vehicle? What is the method in which the donor is going to give this asset to charity? Are they interested in a charitable gift annuity? Brian mentioned I'm working on a couple related to funding a CGA with real property. Is the donor going to be receiving something in return, like a quid pro quo? So those are the 5 steps that I look at, and then I try to apply them to the various technologies that I have available to me that exist. Before I get into that, Brian, do you have any thoughts? Or just keep going?
I do have 1 or 2, and actually it was more on the prompt engineering. I couldn't get my my video to go on quickly enough because as Paul mentioned, that's sort of how you query ChatGPT or similar. Again, ChatGPT is not the only one, but similar types of tools. But I read an article which I thought was very illustrative of what is occurring in this space. So a professor was getting some questions from some of his students about, hey, this AI, ChatGPT, how popular it is, as Paul mentioned. Maybe we ought to develop a course at our university around how to best use the tool, and in particular around prompt engineering. So the professor, I think, said, I was like, oh my gosh, to develop a course, the syllabus and the outline and the speaker notes and any kind of the presentation materials and, the quizzes, the tests in particular for a very new course. So then he thought, well, why don't I just let ChatGPT do the whole thing? So he basically, he said 1 hour, typed in, I would like to have a full syllabus for a 10-week course that will meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 1 hour. He just that was the prompt that he typed in for prompt engineering. Submit. Within about 2 minutes, less than that, it popped up, here is your full syllabus for the entire course. And he said, okay, now I want break it down by each individual class. It then did that. And he said he had to barely modify. Then there are additional sort of add-on plug-in type tools for PowerPoint now. So he said, now plug in this, basically information from ChatGPT was used to generate the full PowerPoint sort of deck for the whole course. And there's another sort of plug-in piece that does animations. So he said, let's just imagine I wasn't going to do the course, and then I would like to have an animated professor teaching each one of those 1 hour segments for full 10 weeks. He said within 2 hours, all of that was done and packaged.
Yeah.
He said it would have taken him weeks to put all of that together. So I just want to sort of, again, provide some real life examples for how this is being used, not in the future, today. And I'll even mention it right now. One of the best quotes I've ever heard, I 2 or 3 that are very profound. This one's very profound for me for whatever reason. And somebody said, the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed. And what we're seeing now with ChatGPT and similar tools is how fast it can be distributed. And then what it's actually doing is it's learning from all of these different prompts and all of the different ways that people are saying, no, not quite, not quite. Well, it's learning as it goes. It's kind of like Deep Blue when IBM played chess and people said there's no way a machine will ever be able to beat a grandmaster in chess until it beat every grandmaster at chess. This is taking that chess idea and globalizing it across kind of everything. So with that, I'll sort of defer back to you, Paul.
Yes, and in Brian's example, I can absolutely believe that that's true. But I would guess too that professor also had to, it saved that professor, him or her, a considerable amount of time, but they had to go back and they had to make sure that all of that was 100% accurate. And so, and that's a good segue into a point that I want to make before I introduce ChatGPT, is that there's tools out there that you can use for all types of plan giving research. They're credible tools. It's static content. So it's like an encyclopedia of plan giving information that you pull off the shelf that's just in web format. And I've got a list of some of them that are up here. A couple of these have been around since Web 1.0, and these organizations were leaders in creating these research tools. So one of them was Crescendo. I think that GIFLAW has been around since 98, 99, something like that. Plan Giving Design Center, same thing. And again, these are, so Plan Giving Design Center, tons of articles written by many experts in the field on esoteric information related to plan giving. GIFLAW, a nice little, like I said, it's an online book, if you will. I developed Gift Wizard, which is for my own company, Plan Giving Interactive, which is kind of an update to that, where you can find things a little quicker. You can do a search by gift by asset type, and then dig into the type of gift vehicle that donor may be interested in using that asset for. And then you can actually put that information into a proposal for a donor. There's Conrad Teitel produces an incredible technical newsletter on a monthly basis. And of course, a free, probably one of the best books ever written on gifts of non-cash assets by our own Brian Klontz and Ryan Raffin, which is a free download on the Charitable Solutions website. There's some other very advanced technical research tools out there. Thomson Reuters, a well-known attorney by the name of Richard Fox, and then Bloomberg has Larry Katzenstein and Laura Peoples. So that's the technology that exists today. And I still think that this technology is all extremely relevant, because with ChatGPT, this is not a sentient being yet. Okay, this is artificial intelligence that's using predictive modeling to answer questions in the best way that it can. And sometimes those answers can be, as they say in the technology world, some of the answers can be kooky, which means they make absolutely no sense and they're wrong, all the way to spooky, that they are so good and so accurate that it's almost mind-blowing to you. And I'll actually give you, I think, a couple examples of those today. Let's start with just some best practices for using ChatGPT and eventually probably Google. Some of you probably know that if you watched 60 Minutes 2 weeks ago, 60 Minutes spent all 60 minutes with Google discussing AI. And, Google may seem like they're behind, with this because ChatGPT got it out there first, but I wouldn't sleep on, what Google's competitive technology to ChatGPT is going to be very shortly. So a lot of information out there. I want to talk about how you can use it now. I would start with using those existing static research tools that you saw on the previous slide and have your own process for analyzing the gift. I shared with you my 5-step process. You find a process that works best for you and use that. But here's one of the great things about ChatGPT. If you, no matter, including my own program, Gift Wizard, if you look at Gift Law or any of them, they're written pretty technically. And so what ChatGPT can do is you can paste some of that technical information in there and prompt it to explain it to, a 20-year-old or an 18-year-old or something, or, the average individual. And so it will simplify that subject matter, and that will help you in your written communication back to a prospective donor. So that's one of the ways that I found it to be extremely useful. Sometimes it's not even technical information. I just put a ton of information into the prompt. It's kind of a rambling. I want to help me write this email to this donor on this topic, and it produces an amazingly coherent email. There's a ton of different use cases where it can help you in your fundraising and in your productivity. Now, one thing I wanted to mention too is that if you use ChatGPT or ChatGPT, we're going to talk about 3 and 4 and what the difference is, but it doesn't matter. Both of them were, I'm probably describing this wrong, but they were disconnected from the internet in September of 2021. And the reason for that is it needed to disconnect from the internet to start training itself. So what you'll find is if you started asking it questions about the Secure Act 1.0, which passed December of 2021, it will give you some pretty accurate answers. It won't know about the proposed regs that happened in February of 2022, and it's certainly not going to know about Secure 2.0. So it will give you incorrect information if you were to ask it information about that, but that will probably change very shortly. I don't know all of the technical aspects of how that will eventually plug into real-time information with the internet, but that's something that you should know. Okay, so let's just walk through a screenshot of a few quick examples here, and then kind of bring things in for a landing. So, one of the things, as I mentioned before, is that you have to know what you are talking about in order to get valuable information. So, for instance, you might have a donor who says, I'm interested in a charitable remainder trust, and I'm going to be selling my business soon. I might have a buyer waiting in the wings. And after a little due diligence, that you learn that it's a subchapter S corporation. And you think to yourself, there's something that a light bulb comes off where I know that doesn't work well. And through a little bit of research, you realize that a charitable remainder trust cannot be a shareholder of a subchapter S corporation. So you might get to that if you start asking ChatGPT, but you're not going to get to very, very nuanced solutions. And one of the solutions that we use at Charitable Solutions, or you could use on your own, is that you may have a situation where a donor is getting ready to sell a business that happens to be a sub S, and you could actually create something called a C corporation blocker. And so basically what you're doing is you are creating kind of a holding company, if you will, that's structured as a C corporation, and you're transferring the sub S in there. So while the C corporation, you have double taxation, unfortunately, with the C corporation. But if you compare that to the fact that you can't, a CRT cannot be an owner of a sub S, or that if you have unrelated business income tax, 100% of it is taxed in a CRT, it's a much better outcome. But most people don't know about this. So I asked ChatGPT 3 before I had, this is the free version that any of you can have, before I set up ChatGPT 4 now, which I have, which is the paying version. And I asked it this question: how do you use a C corporation blocker in a CRT? And I got what I thought was a pretty good answer. There's nothing necessarily incorrect with the answer on the left, but it's a little bit superficial, but for the layman, it can absolutely be helpful in explaining what this strategy is. The problem is that, again, you have to have a skilled background in order to know that this type of technique would even exist. What's even more impressive, though, is what you see on the right-hand side. So it gives me that response, right? And then I just respond, right afterwards, and I ask it, can you recommend a checklist for how to set up this arrangement? What is incredible about this is that this is extremely, and I mean extremely, powerful in terms of the sequence of the steps that it describes. Okay, especially number 6. It just, it blows my mind that it knows that what the whole idea of what you're doing here is that you are putting that sub S into the C corporation blocker, and that you're selling that asset, the C corporation is, and and you're gonna and you're selling the appreciated asset in the operating business. The C corporation is going to pay corporate income tax. Okay, that's not the end of the world. And the C corporation is going to then start paying dividends out to the CRT, and it's going to distribute the incomes from the CRT to the trust beneficiaries. If that doesn't impress you, then I'm not sure what will, and that's ChatGPT-4. So I'll give you an example now of ChatGPT-3 versus 4. Can you fund a charitable remainder trust with real estate that has debt? And when you ask it yes or no questions, my previous slide, you notice it wasn't a yes or no question. I try to prompt it without a yes or no question, but in this case I did. And the answer was pretty good, but there was some misinformation here. This is what I would call more kooky than spooky. Kooky in that it says things, see where I can find it here. It says that it's important to understand that if the property is sold during the term of the trust, the remaining debt on the property will need to be paid off from the proceeds of the sale before the remaining balance can be distributed to charity. Okay, well, we know that that's not how a charitable remainder trust works. And so, but then I asked this exact same question to ChatGPT-4, and it's quite a bit of an upgrade. So it starts out with a disclaimer, which ChatGPT-3 didn't. So it answers the question with a lot of confidence and a lot of misinformation, and at least with 4, like all good gift planners, we start with a disclaimer, right? But it goes into extreme detailed answer in response into what exactly the repercussions are of donating real estate that contains debt to a CRT. And it didn't do that in ChatGPT-3. So if you look at that second paragraph, this is exactly what happens. If you donate real estate, it's treated as a bargain sale. The debt aspect of it is treated by a bargain sale. And it goes on, how it goes on to explain the repercussions are pretty much spot on. And then it even provides several ways that you may be able to address these issues. These are superficial ideas, but nonetheless, these are incredible that it comes up with actually potential solutions to your problem. One of the solutions that we use at Charitable Solutions, by the way, is that we, in many cases, we can do this where we will purchase an undivided interest from the donor, the amount to satisfy the debt. And then the donor will take whatever undivided interest that they have left, transfer that to a CRT, and then we collectively sell that real estate together to a third party. That's one way to mitigate that issue. Another one is you could donate the real estate to fund a CGA instead. A CRT cannot have debt in it. In a CGA, we would be okay. It would still trigger that bargain sale. But those are going to be solutions that ChatGPT-4 aren't going to arrive at. So this is a great starting point, but it's not going to give you everything out there in the universe in terms of creative planning and creative solutions. And then this one was provided to me by our own Ryan Raffin at Charitable Solutions. And on the left-hand side, Ryan sent this to me. He was using the free version of ChatGPT-3. And he asked it, does the qualified appraisal need to value the donated asset as of the date of gift or the date the asset is sold? And it says here that that if the asset has appreciated in value since the time of the donation, the donor may be eligible for a larger deduction. Conversely, if the asset has declined in value, the donor may be eligible for a smaller deduction. Well, that's just kooky and not spooky in terms of its accuracy. It's incorrect. And so then Ryan goes on to say, what's your basis or citation for that second paragraph? And it says, okay, you caught me. I was wrong. I apologize. And it goes on to provide actually an accurate answer. It provides the citation in Internal Revenue Code 170 that pertains to the rules around qualified appraisals. So then I asked it in ChatGPT-4 the exact same question. Again, it starts out with its disclaimer now, but the way that it answers the question to a donor, to me, is so elegant. It's better than probably any way that I've ever described it to a donor, especially in that second or third paragraph down there where it says the qualified appraisal must be completed within 60 days prior to the date of the gift and no later than the due date, including extensions on the tax return in which the deduction is first claimed. The appraisal should be conducted by a qualified appraiser who meets certain IRS requirements. None of that information was in ChatGPT-3, so you can see how it continues to improve over time. Last example, I found this one on the internet. An attorney, I think it was an attorney from Australia actually, but he was grousing about the fact that ChatGPT can draft legal documents. And I think it's a long, long ways away from doing that. But I gave it a shot, and I just kind of I just threw up a kind of a prompt that wasn't that good. I said, draft my last will and testament. My name is John Doe. I live in Connecticut. I'm of sound mind. That sounds like something that a layman would say. And I'm going to leave it all to the Salvation Army. So it goes on, and I couldn't share the whole thing in the screenshot. And I've neglected to appoint an executor. So you see all the articles laid out, just like you would see in a standard will. And you get down to, that fourth article, and it says, yeah, you need to name an executor. So you got a little text box in there for where to name your executor. If I showed you the entire document, down at the bottom, it had a place for two witnesses to sign, which I guess in Connecticut law, you probably need that. And then a place for the notary public to sign. So I share that because, there's this kind of movement forward to empower individuals to have free access to estate planning documents. It's a polarizing topic and a debate for another time. But if a donor truly, and I mean truly, had a very simple estate, they were leaving everything to one person or one charitable organization, theoretically, this could likely draft their last will and testament, possibly their other supporting estate planning documents as well. So just to kind of start to summarize things, this technology, I think, can help us, especially tailor those customized emails. I found that to be incredibly helpful. I think we all have writer's block. And so the general idea is just to get you started, and then you make improvements to it before you have that final email or final case statement or anything that you want it to write. Eventually, I think that this generative AI is something that we'll have on our own organization's website, and it'll provide this opportunity for charities to start to get an understanding of what your donors' interests are, so you can personalize your content to them. And I think we're starting to see this now, where CRMs are working with all of your other tools that you have at your organization. And eventually, hopefully, the information from those tools will get into the CRM, so you can start to really understand the persona of that donor, what they're interested in, what they're not interested in. So, for donors, this is kind of what I've talked about for charities. I think it's going to streamline our donor education. We're going to be able to communicate more effectively, more rapidly with donors. For donors, I think that if eventually having generative AI may be helpful for them, just to start to navigate what they ultimately want to accomplish in their philanthropic planning. I assure you that none of the AI out there, it's not sentient, and it's going to help donors, but it's not going to be able, they're not going to be able to go onto your website and close a charitable gift annuity through a qualified charitable distribution because of Secure Act 2.0, they're not going to be able to do that from start to finish. This is going to help them become better educated, which is probably why you invested in a plan giving site 15, 20 years ago to begin with. And I think that this will just elevate it up a notch for us. So we went through all of that information rather quickly, Brian. I wonder if you have any kind of thoughts or maybe responses that you've seen out there in the chat that are points that you want to bring up.
No, there were some themes that I was able to answer that, what very understandably sort of about plagiarism pieces and copyright protection and, how do you know that information that you're getting through ChatGPT in terms of the prompt response is, cited correctly, if at all, frankly. So that those are a lot of the real issues that the ecosystem, I guess, is sort of working through. I would also say, and these are things that, which I thought was very clever of Paul's use, I think, and correct me, Paul, I think it was today. So Paul is working on a complex case, and we have great attorneys. Russ Willis, I think, is on the call today too, and Gary Sneerson and others. And so I think it was maybe 2 or 3 different sort of technical answers came back on different sort of facets of a particular case, and Paul's working with another university on it. And then, so I think, and Paul, you should be sort of telling the story, but I think what I understood you to say was you sort of took like all 3 of those, somewhat disparate responses that were quite technical and sort of just threw it into ChatGPT to say, hey, can you sort of make this maybe more of a coherent layman's response in some kind of consolidated way? And as Paul keeps saying, which I think is so important, it does not take you 100% there. And so I think you said, hey, it got me 80% there with an email. It would have taken me a while to like, okay, how do I, mesh this piece into that piece? And it's like, boom, there it is. And then he was able to spend in his sort of mental sort of stamina, I guess. You may have more than I do, adding the extra 20%. And I think one thing, though, that I would suggest, again, this is my forecast, who knows, but I would say, too, maybe the GPT-1 version might have gotten you rough 50% of the way there. GPT-2 is like 2/3 of the way there. GPT-3 was like 80%. These new versions are coming out roughly every 18 months. So back to my metaphor of the 1950 Indy 500 pit stop to 2013. This is every 18 months. It's whipping, and it's so iterative based on the prompts that you are making and everyone else is making too. So I'd actually be very curious, which you've already done, is to replicate Ryan's prompt on the appraisal for ChatGPT-4. You see how quickly that iterated. And that was, I think, literally only like a month ago or 2 months ago.
Correct.
And now when somebody else asks the same thing 6 months from now or a couple of years from now, what you're going to be seeing is it's 80% accurate now, 85, 88, 92. It is going to whip pretty fast to where there'll be even less and less time to polish. So I think you've heard all that, but I think that was some of the stuff that came out of the Q&A.
I think that if I could summarize how I've been using it so far, I have not used it for technical research. Okay. But, I created a technical research platform. But for others out there who have no interest in doing deep dives into technical research, have at it. I would encourage you to use the free version, ChatGPT 3 or 4, which is the paid version. And again, caveat, you may have one of those things they call a hallucination, where it's a kooky response rather than a spooky accurate response. But it's a starting point if you're not one of those types of individuals that likes to dive deep into gift law, Plan Giving Design Center, Gift Wizard, those types of tools out there. But what I use it more so for is communication. It saves a considerable period of time writing. And, the ultimate goal for me is how can I have more time building relationships with donors, with clients, others. And I hope that that's most of your, all of your goals out there. And so if that's just the one thing that a technology can do for you, then you'll be better off.
Yeah. And if you can go to the next slide, and I'll ask this too. So a person, Kathy, asked, did you use any part of ChatGPT or other tools to plan this? And I know we talked about that originally, but I think you actually did put that in there. It was like, what would an outline look like for using ChatGPT technology in fundraising? But I think you did that. And actually that became a lot of the agenda, actually. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, the title and
Right.
pretty much, I would say 80% of the email that we sent out inviting individuals to the webinar was
Yes.
probably verbatim from ChatGPT, but yeah, 80%.
And she put like a wink, like just kidding. And it's like, no, we're actually using this. So I basically said, Paul, come up with the title using ChatGPT, kind of the agenda piece, and what would be then a good email, which got 830 people to sign up, about registering. And so again, this is not theoretical. This is happening in real time. Once you go on there, it takes about a minute to sort of create that kind of content. So I want to be careful in everybody's time. I've got exactly 1 o'clock. These are our past webinars that Paul had up. All these are free, all on the Charitable Solutions website. And again, this one will be posted, I think early next week. You'll get an email letting you know when it's posted with that link. And then we'll include the Q&A again from this session and Tuesdays. And then we'll have that just like we have for all the past ones. So I hope this has been helpful. And I do always sort of joke too, like have a little glass of wine, get in there, because you're going to spend like 30 minutes going, oh, what about this? Wonder about that. And you're going to be wondering for about an hour going, wow, this is pretty cool. Even like as a quick example, my wife and I are going up for vacation for 10 days in North Carolina in the summer. And you just type in, I'm going to this area of North Carolina for these 10 days. What would be almost like a travel itinerary for that? Now, anything that's sort of pre-2021, at least right now, is what we're getting, but you can just sort of see where this is going again very quickly. So hope this is helpful for everybody. Hope it's a great tool for you to communicate with your donors, with your clients, with your general constituents too, and we'll sort of see how this evolves. So Paul, thank you so much. Great job as always. And thank everybody for your time.
Thanks, everyone.